It's from 7 to 8:15, so we will be out of here at 8:15. You're not going to have to be here till 9 o'clock. I know everybody's time is important. We want to have discussion. Discussion is going to be encouraged at the right time because I consider myself to be the discussion leader, not the teacher, because I know that there's going to be a lot of people that have a lot of things to say that know a lot more about a subject than I do. So I just prefer to be the discussion leader. I want to turn on the overhead chart here, and I want to begin by introducing a quote. And it comes from Thomas Jefferson, one of my favorite historical people. And this was later in his life when he said this, but he said, "We are not afraid to follow truth wherever it may lead, nor to tolerate any error so long as reason is left free to combat it." That's a powerful statement to me because it really kind of sums up how I believe we should be in regards to our political quest for our discovery of political truth, and then in our relationship to those that we deal with. Like, first of all, he says that there's 3 points. If I was going to preach a sermon on this on a Sunday morning, I would have a 3-point sermon right here. I'd say that the first point was how we should all be not afraid to follow the truth wherever it may lead. You know, I think every single one of us have had to change our view at one time or another, right? I know there were so many things when I was a kid. We were talking about the younger days earlier. There were so many things that I did when I was a young man that I believed in, and I believed in with my whole heart. But now, I'm a little bit wiser. I've learned a little bit more. I've had to change my views on some things. And in our own personal lives, we're not usually afraid to do that. But a lot of times when, political friends or when our long-held traditional ideas get in the way, or whatever it might be, sometimes those things get in the way of us finding our way to the truth. And so I just hope that all of us will come to the table and say, let's just talk about it. Let's discover whatever we can, no matter where the chips may fall. It's going to happen, like the second point says, tolerating any error. It's going to happen, and that would be the second point, that sometimes we're going to disagree. And I'm going to bring this up probably at every meeting because I want everybody to know we can disagree in here, and we don't have to agree on anything when we leave. You know how contentious the conventions can become and the monthly meetings can become and all that kind of stuff? We don't have to agree even on one thing here tonight. So that's the good thing about it, and that's why I like getting together studying like this. So we're going to follow the truth, we're going to tolerate error, and when we say error, I might think what you believe is error, you might think what I believe is error, but we're willing to tolerate one another because of the last point, so long as reason is left free to combat it. That is, in this class right here, you're not going to be told that your view doesn't count, that your way doesn't count. You're not going to be told you can't speak or that, it's just not kosher or whatever. We're going to be the kind of people here that, we're just going to say how we feel and just go on from there. So I just wanted to introduce that first of all. And if you never read the originals, as we might call them, read the Founding Fathers, read what they had to say, read some of the words that they had to say, I'd encourage you to do it because so many of the things they say really make it clear what we're trying to teach and what we're trying to present in our time, like this idea of the republic and the democracy that we'll talk about in a minute. So always keep that in mind. Some things may be uncomfortable, some things we may not like, but let's just be the kind of people that would talk about them. Okay? Nobody has to be mad when we leave. All right. All right, so now let's talk about this second point here. The way I want to do these classes is I want to look at a couple of bills every time we get together, but I also want to look at least, hopefully, one core, what I would call a foundational subject. Because a lot of times when you look at a foundational subject, what that'll do is that'll cover a whole slew of bills. Meaning, if you understand, hopefully when we talk about this, if you don't understand this already, hopefully when you do, when you approach so many bills that you look at, understanding this one concept would answer whether you're for that bill or whether you're against it. sometimes you don't have to specifically know all the details of, well, what's involved with being a dietitian, what's involved with, all the certification. You don't necessarily have to know that if you understand the difference between republic and democracy. So anyway, let's go into that right now, a republic and a democracy. I've heard a couple of people here say that they've heard others say that we live in a democracy. And I can understand how people make that mistake. I can understand how people make that mistake simply because that's all you hear in the media. In our great democracy, our democracy does this and it does that. And I can understand how people misunderstand the concept. But I want you to think about if we were a pure D, that's how they say it in Hilton, Oklahoma, isn't it? If we were a pure D democracy, I have a hard time saying that word, how things would actually be. Everything that we would look at, every issue that there was would simply be a straight up and down yes or no vote. Like, for instance, let's say on gun rights, if we were a pure democracy, we would say, okay, let's say Obama says, let's just put it up for a vote right now. Either we're going to confiscate guns, yes, or we're going to let people have them, no. Vote yes or no right now. And then the legislature gets together, they vote, and they vote, yes, we're going to take the guns away. Well, we would have a problem with that, wouldn't we? I would assume most everybody in here anyway understands the Second Amendment, the right to life and the right to protect your life and all in that and what's involved in the Second Amendment. So we would say, no, you can't do that. Well, why? I mean, if it's just a straight up and down vote, if it's just majority rules, mob rule as they sometimes called it, then they wouldn't legitimately, because rights are foundational. We'll see, that's for in a minute. But they wouldn't actually have the right to take it away. But if you lived under that system, that's how things would operate. It could be like a, what do they call it, a direct democracy, where everybody literally has a vote. And no matter what the vote is, that's the outcome. Or if the guys all get together up there at Capitol Hill and they vote, we're going to lock up everybody that's has brown hair and is getting bald-headed like John Lewis. We're going to lock up all those kind of people. Well, why couldn't they do that if we all got together and the majority said we're going to lock up those kind of people? What would we say? Well, we would say you have no right, wouldn't we? Because when you live under a republic, there are certain things, and those are what we call the rights of man. That comes from Thomas, well, it may not come from Thomas Paine, but he's certainly one of the men that was there at the forefront of it. The rights of men, or of mankind, are not subject to democratic vote. That is, my right to life as a human being, all of you couldn't get together and say, we don't like this guy, let's just put an end to him now. You couldn't do that, could you? We don't live in that kind of society. We live in a republic where the rights of people are never subject to the will of the majority. And therein really lies the difference, in my mind, between the two. You would say, well, say, for instance, my gun rights. They come from God, don't they? All of the rights that we have ultimately come from God. So we would say, those rights coming from God, no legislature can get together and decide to take them away. And again, that's the difference between the two. Anyone want to throw anything in on that? Does that make sense, the way I'm presenting that?
I have one question.
Yes.
If you say that we're a republic, what kind of republic would you say that we are? Because I'll have people say, oh yeah, we're a republic, we're a constitutional republic, or people will throw names in there.
Yeah.
If you was to give it a label, what would you give it a label, or would you just say republic?
Without me knowing if there's any specific titles that apply to certain groups, I would say a constitutional republic. But I haven't looked at that issue.
I understand. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I know. I understand what you're saying. There are certain ideas and certain corruptions even of the idea of a republic.
Depends on how you defined it.
Huh?
It depends on how you define it.
Yeah, it does depend on how you define it. If you look at the idea of a republic, you're also going to see one very important thing. And this is something that Jefferson and many of the other founders looked at a lot, and that's the idea of self-government. Think about that concept. If you understand what a self-government is, then you will understand the difference between a republic and a democracy. Self-government does not mean all of us get together and decide that a few of us get to do something and the others don't. That's not self-government. Self-government is literally where I govern myself and you govern yourself. And everybody takes care of themselves. There was a man that wrote a book one time called It's Good to Be King, I believe is what it was titled. And the essence of the book was, we are all, if you will, our own government. And the only one that has any right, if you will, to do anything in regards to the life or the liberty or the pursuit of happiness of the individual is you. Quite honestly, that is the essence of a self-government. That in the end, now I know a lot of people will try to make exceptions for it, but in the end, the idea of a republic or a self-government is self-governed. That mankind, the individual, is the best and capable of taking care of themselves. And the reason I wanted to bring those up is because I believe that the two bills that we're going to look at and the two concepts that we look at tonight really are bound up in this idea of self-government. With both of these bills, we're going to simply be asking, are we ourselves, that is governing ourselves, are we better equipped in conjunction with our doctor or whoever we want, are we better equipped to make our own health decisions than the government is? Well, as far as the idea of a republic, the idea of a republic says you're in charge of your life. You're in charge of your health decisions, the direction of your life, whatever it may be ultimately. Your protection, going back to the Second Amendment again, your right to bear arms, your right to protect yourself. All of that is bound up in this idea of a republic. And the difficult thing about it is that if we start tinkering with the idea of self-government, of each person governing themselves, then you find yourself, essentially in a landslide, so to speak, where, if you start saying, well, we won't honor it here, we won't honor it there, we won't honor it over here, essentially, it kind of gets to where we are today, where everything is becoming against the law, where we as individuals have no rights to do anything. And I don't think any of us want to go there. So, that's my take on Republican democracy. Anybody want to add anything at all?
Back to what Jack was saying, I've heard the term representative republic thrown around a lot. I don't know if that's a term
Yeah, that
that's
might.
accepted or not.
Yeah, certainly, and that's something I meant to bring up, is certainly the idea of democratic elections, because some people get confused. They say, well, if we're not a democracy, then what about all these elections that we have where the majority wins? Like I ran for treasurer last year, and I lost. My opponent got over 50%, I got less. Democratic rule, majority took the office, kept the office, okay? So people say, how come you have that, and then you say we're not a democracy? Well, as a form of government, we're not a democracy. Meaning that the way we decide how we're going to be governed, because we're a self-governed society, the way we decide we're going to be governed as individuals is not open to democratic discussion. However, who we choose to vote for us is decided by majority rule. Who we send to Oklahoma City, who we send to the U.S. Capitol. Those don't violate my, whether my guy wins or your guy wins, my right to a self-government has not been violated in any way. So we can choose somebody democratically to represent us, but we're still a republic as far as our form of government. Does that make any sense? Does that make sense? To understand the differences, yes. Majority must decide in things that we must get together in common for. If we're going to build a road, let's say, a state road, well, you know, we're going to, some kind of consensus is going to have to be reached. So in that sense, yes, but not in the form of our government, though. Rights are not subject to majority vote. Now, if you look through some of these bills, all the time they're trying to take away rights with these bills, but that doesn't mean that they're actually authorized to do it, because they're not. Okay?
It's actually rule of law, isn't it? Constitutional republic governed by a rule of law, we decide who makes the laws. But if you had a true democracy, then 50-50, if you had 51%, then that 51% could do anything they wanted to do.
Right, and that's the danger, isn't it, of a pure democracy? And that's what the founders were really, really hesitant about, was, you know, if it's a pure democracy, then what if, like, say, 51% of the states back then decided that they, you know, didn't like the religion of this, they were a little concerned about religion. So if they didn't like the religion of New Hampshire up here, could they just vote to abolish it? The answer would be no, because we live in a republic. Because majority doesn't rule on our right to regulate our life and our worship and that kind of thing.
But they can with the what is that? It's a 5, where they can get 3/4 of the United States, like with prohibition.
Amendment?
Oh, a constitutional
No,
amendment.
Where you have 3/4 of the United States decides we're going to stop this, or we're going to change this, we're not going to allow this, and then it becomes law.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing there. You know, like I said, they can't, you know, the legislature often has violated the essence of a republic. But they have no right to do it. And the only way for us to make sure that doesn't happen is to keep talking, you know. Thankfully and hopefully we live in a society where that kind of thing couldn't happen again. If we quit talking, it could. But I believe as long as we're using our voices, talking, teaching people, we can make progress.
Martial law will nullify it.
Martial law definitely nullify it, yes.
I know one senator is trying to do it right now.
Trying to do what?
No one you can't
No,
have a
trying to
big or
use
little
that
or.
particular law to change the United States.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, there's always, like I say, special interest, and, or as the Bible
Money.
says it, evil never sleeps.
Money.
Money never sleeps. Money is always trying to do what it does. Yeah, and so we can never sleep either. We can never sleep. So, that's the idea of a republic, and I believe if people understood that, we wouldn't have half the problems in our state and in our federal government like we do today. There wouldn't be a question as to whether a person has a right to carry a weapon on their person. You know, there would not be a question of that if we understood self-government. And so that's why we need to keep talking about it. Let me look at the time here. By the way, on our second subject, Jack Jones is going to speak to us for a few minutes, so I want to make sure to give him enough time. All right, so, you know, some issues we might not find important. This is one final thing I want to say before we go into our first bill. Some issues we might not find important. Like if you look at me drinking at Coca-Cola and not having breakfast and sometimes not having lunch, I am not a man of diet and nutrition, okay? I just, you know, I know, buddy, he's really into it. God bless you for doing that, man, but I just don't have it right now in my life. And, you know, I may not be interested in health. I may not be interested in my diet. And I may not be interested in a lot of things. But to me, the highest patriotic duty that a person really, or not duty, but patriotic fulfillment of the American idea is to honor this idea of a republic regardless of whether the subject is interesting or important to me at all. Some issues, actually, I might even disagree with. I read some things about some certain remedies that there are out there, and I say, oh, come on, you know, that doesn't work. But I do respect the right in the Republic for people, you know, to follow what they believe in those ways, even if I don't believe it. So the issues we look at tonight might not be important to us. They may or may not. Other issues may or may not be important, but just think of the totality of our republic. And I think it'll help you to see which side you should fall on, whether it's important to you or not. Okay, so let's go on to the dietitians now, okay? The State of Oklahoma Registered Dietitians Act. This is Senate Bill 615. If you have your phone with you and you want to look it up, you can. But what I've done this time is I've gotten Senate Bill 615. This is on the Registered Dietitians Act. I will say right now that the bill, I was told by the representative that this bill was handed to, that he is going to not allow the bill to advance. It passed the Senate, and then it went to the House, and he's not going to let it go any further. You know, sometimes we get upset when one person in charge of a committee can kill a bill. You know, we're like, oh man, what's this guy doing killing this bill? But then other times, I have to be honest, I'm happy about it. I'm like, hey man, he killed that bill, way to go. I guess it depends on whether you like it or not. But anyway, this particular bill, I didn't copy the whole thing because what it actually does is it goes in and it amends the law. There's many pages to it. I only copied one page. Let me talk about, first of all, current law, the way it is right now. Under current law, a person can become a registered, licensed dietitian in the state of Oklahoma. That is, they can do all of the required things that are required by the state of Oklahoma. They do those things, pay their membership or their fee or whatever it is, and they can be a registered dietitian. And there's a lot of people, a lot of young people especially, that follow that route. They want to be involved in diet and exercise programs and, you know, living healthy. So they follow that path. However, it is not against the law for a person to have some kind of diet or health program. They don't have to be licensed to have it, in other words. They don't have to go out and they don't have to meet all of the state requirements. Say, for instance, I feel like I've read the Bible and I've been touched by God to provide a certain kind of health or nutritional advice or exercise or whatever it may be. Well, under current law, I could do that. You know, I could set up a web page, or I could go door to door. I could talk to you as my friends and say, hey, you know, I feel like that this is the best way you should lead your life as far as your health, and, you know, and not against the law. This bill, however, Senate Bill 615, in essence would make that practice illegal. If I hadn't taken the time to jump through all the governmental hoops and become a registered dietitian, my business would be illegal. Now, if you look on Part B here, this is the part, all of this is the new law, and I don't remember, this is page 5. This is the new law, but if you look at Part B, it talks about how you can be fined $50 not to exceed $250. Now that wouldn't be bad all by itself, but it says each day of violation shall constitute a separate offense. In other words, they can shut you down. If I wanted to open me a little shop here, whatever it may be, they, in essence, this gives the government the authority, and that's just what the government needs, isn't it? Is more authority. That gives the government the authority to shut down anybody they don't like. Thankfully, it's only a misdemeanor, though. Isn't that nice? It's only a misdemeanor. But let me see here. Now some people may say, well, okay, big deal. You know, you got to become a registered dietitian. Why wouldn't anybody want to become registered? Well, I looked it up as to exactly what a person needs to do in order to become a registered dietitian, and this is what you must do. Possess a bachelor's degree in nutrition. Now, I possess a bachelor's degree, but it's not in nutrition. So already, even though I feel like God has led me to this health and nutrition, already I'm going to have to go out and get me a bachelor's degree in nutrition. Secondly, I've got to complete a committee-approved internship. Well, what if there are many alternate forms of medicine? Let's say there is an alternate form of medicine, and the kind of medicine I want to practice is not the kind of medicine that the committee wants me to practice. they may actually force me into practicing some kind of medicine or health and nutrition that I don't even agree with. So that would be something else. Then you've got to pass the required exams, you've got to get your background checks, you've got to renew it every year. Costs you $100 a year, up to $200 if you're late. So now, for some people that are educated, that might not be a big thing. If you already have a bachelor's, maybe just get a few more hours, you get your nutrition, your bachelor's, but still, it's the point that basically the government is licensing, controlling, taking away this idea of self-government and putting that in the hands of the state of Oklahoma. Comments on that?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you know how many other states are considering this type of thing? Because when I was reading through this, I was thinking, okay, this sounds like something that ACA would do, especially if you read what Michelle Obama's trying to do now with what we can and we can't eat. And that's the first thing that came to my mind. Do you know how many other states are trying to do this kind of thing?
I don't know. I know there are several, and when I say several, a few at least. When I was looking at a group that monitors this stuff, and there were several states going through it. And from what I understand from a representative I was talking to, he said it probably will come up again next year. So there is definitely a push
There's
coming from
some
somewhere.
link somewhere
Yeah, of course.
with that,
Right.
because now they're trying to monitor not what just your kids eat, but what we eat.
Yeah,
So-
that's their goal, I would say,
And this would,
ultimately speaking.
that falls right in with it. So that was my question.
Okay.
I don't know, you know what happened there? It took 2 votes to get it out of the Senate. And the first vote it failed, the second vote it succeeded. And I don't know what changed in between those.
I
two votes.
researched that, and honestly, I could not find the answer to that. And I do know, or I've
Somebody
heard,
found the right dirt.
yeah, a lot of times, you know, they
Right
just,
person.
they do arm twisting. They
No.
try to educate them, you know, educate them into their side, you know, go office to office, say, man, I know you voted against it, but blah, blah, blah. Who knows what may happen to change the
Look
vote.
how much money we'll make.
Yeah, a lot of time, you know, you don't want to say all of them do that, or even many of them do that. I don't know, but that certainly is a possibility.
This is close to home, though, Veggies health food store. You know, you go in there and Tom or Mary will give you
Yeah.
advice. That would make all that illegal. They couldn't do it, which. they
Yeah,
help-
you know,
they help a lot of
technically-
people.
Technically, they would have to become registered dietitians. Now, you know, some may say, well, maybe they wouldn't be that hard on them. Maybe they would let it go. But, you know, maybe they wouldn't either. Probably not. And when they wanted to, they would be able to. It doesn't work that way, does it?
Depending on which registered dietitian would turn them in.
Yeah,
File a
that,
complaint or-
mhm.
The one who has to take over their business, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Let me read you some things that I found from this webpage that says some of the things that would be affected by this act if it passed. Naturopathic physicians, midwives, personal trainers, because they provide diet, you know, advice, Chinese medicine practitioners, herbalists, and acupuncturists would all be affected, and I'm sure there would be a lot more than that. But anybody basically that just, you know, they feel like they've got a form of medicine that it may not be according to the strict scientific method, you know, as laid down by the state of Oklahoma, they ought to be able to practice that, you know. If I want to go to this person that practices this kind of medicine, I'm self-governed, you're self-governed.
I've got a friend that's she's been in midwifery for 20-some odd years. And basically she had to slip around here in Oklahoma where she got warned by the state one time. So now she just does all of her, she lives here in this proximity. She goes to Texas and does her midwifery.
Yeah. Yeah, it's legal.
She-
It's completely legal
she-
down there.
She loves it. And she delivered my child,
Is that right?
not my, well, my wife.
Great thing, great thing. So, anyway, so,
Don't they have to have classes to do midwifery?
She's an RN.
She's trained. I mean,
She's a
that
registered
should be
nurse.
enough right there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Exactly.
In the
My
hospital or
mother-
not, yeah.
My mother delivered both.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on then. If there's no more discussion about, and like I said, this was killed in the House. It went through the Senate, it passed. Like I said, at first it failed, and we thought, all right. And then it came back up and it passed, and it was alive again. But now, according to the House member that's in charge of that committee, he is not going to let it go on. And I'm assuming he wouldn't change his mind. I wouldn't think he would have any. Well, I mean, if he publicly says so, I'm hoping at least he would stand by his word.
You remember
Okay.
his name?
John Echols.
John Nichols.
And he is the one that has introduced this next bill that we're going to talk about. In fact, I'll go ahead and get it up right now.
And Frank Simpson, he did vote no twice on that,
Right.
right? He voted no both times.
Yes,
And-
so, yeah, credit where credit is due. Simpson voted no in both cases to, he didn't want it to go on either. He wanted to kill it. So, okay, let's go on to our next one, and that is going to be, getting my notes back here, House Bill 2154, if you want to look it up on your computer. This is what's known as Katie's Law. This is the bill that has to do with medical marijuana. Now, I know a lot of people, this would be one of those things you'd say, well, you know what, it's just not really that important to me. And I understand there's a lot of people it's not important to. Some people have tried it, maybe they have, maybe they haven't, and maybe they say, well, you know, I don't even drink anyway. Why would I care about something like this? And I understand that. Not everything is important to everybody. The Dietitians Act is not important to everybody. But, again, we like the idea of a republic, and so I think we ought to at least consider the ideas of this idea of medical marijuana. However, this bill right here has nothing to do with medical marijuana the way you may think it does, or the way you may, when you think of medical marijuana, you think of people smoking pot. But this particular bill, what it does in essence is it allows the part of the marijuana plant that does not produce the high, the CBDs as they're called, it allows that part of the plant to be, however it's done, to be turned into an oil and then to be used on certain children under the age of 18 for their seizures and some other kinds of disorders, which I really honestly don't understand. But it's a very narrow defined law. It doesn't allow a person to, get high. It doesn't allow a person to smoke anything. It simply is this oil that is being provided for these children. Now, what I want to do here real quick is go through page 8, 9, and 10. I know there's going to be some discussion. We'll get to it, but let's go through the bill real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. On page 8 of the bill, it has the definitions of the various words. They always do that, or almost always do that, when they're writing legislation. Define the words because we have to know what we're talking about. So they have marijuana. I don't know why they spell it with an H as opposed to a J.
It's actually cannabis.
Anyway, it'll go down and it'll actually say that. Anyway, so it has its definition here of what it is, but then it says, here is what it does not include, and that's what I want us to see here. Marijuana, it says here, does not include, and then you go to page 9, and I'm going to skip some of these just for the sake of time. The underlined parts are the additions to old cannabidiol, is that how you pronounce that? The CBDs, it does not include that derived from the stalks and from the seeds. And then point E is the part I really wanted you to see. It's for persons 18 years of age or younger, participating in these clinical trials. And then going on, we could read the rest, but for the sake of time, going on to page 10, it says right here that it should have a concentration with this THC. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It shall not have a concentration of THC of more than 0.3%. The THC is the part of the marijuana that makes a person high, that gives them that feeling, right? So this is saying here that this law, that this particular oil that will be provided for these children will not have the concentrations of the chemical in it that will make these children high. That's the essence of the law. And if you look at the legislation on your computer, you'll see that in the end, what they voted was 99-2 in favor of it to pass in the House. It's got to move on to the Senate now, but for most of them, I think anyway, it was kind of a no-brainer. They kind of all saw this isn't about what maybe they think about. It's not like Woodstock or something like that. It's about these children. And I talked with the representative, actually, John Eccles. I'm not sure if that's exactly how you
Yes.
pronounce his name. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Eccles.
He said, I asked him about this, and he said, replied back, he said, thanks for looking at this bill, and I'm just going to give you, this is what he said. By way of very brief background on the bill, it will allow high CBD and low THC oil to be used by physicians to help children with uncontrollable seizures. That's just what I was saying. High CBD, that's a part of the plant that's supposed to help the seizures. THC low, that's the part that makes gives you that feeling. So it won't have any of that in essence. He says, I held an interim study this year where 2 different pediatric neurologists said that this is the right thing to do. So the doctors are on board with it. He says the THC is so low that there is no real threat of abuse because it could not make anyone intoxicated. The Oklahoma State Medical Board Association is for it. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Narcotics is for it. And the governor is for it. It is truly a no-brainer for anyone with any compassion for these children. So, like I said, it was 99-2, and you know, the 2 that weren't on the side with the 99, they may have even abstained, if I remember that right. It just might have been that they didn't vote. So who knows what it actually would have been. But the point is, it's made it through the House, it might make it through the Senate, and it would be, as far as I know, the first time to actually legalize marijuana in any sense in the state of Oklahoma. And of course that leads really to a broader discussion, doesn't it, about whether is this the first step and should the state take the next step as far as medical marijuana is concerned. Now, I will say that, you know, I've told Shirley many times before that I could never I could never be a cigarette salesman or tobacco salesman, me personally. I could never be a beer salesman, you know, drive a beer truck and deliver beer, because of me, my personal convictions in regards to those things. And so I don't want to sound like I'm promoting something I'm not promoting, because I don't want to promote any kind of irresponsible behavior. I don't promote the idea of teenagers being out on the street doing this kind of thing, smoking pot and getting in trouble and all. I don't promote that.
But they're the ones that are getting it now.
Yes, they are getting it now. But what I do promote really, or the idea that I do promote, is this idea of self-government, of the republic, that really in the end, Jack and his doctor, I believe, are the best qualified to govern his life. You know, he in conjunction with his doctor are the best qualified to do whatever kind of medical decisions they want. I may not even agree with them. I may not even agree with those medical decisions, but just by the fact that I agree with self-government, I think it's time that we see that as far as medical
That we
marijuana.
completely legalize medical.
Yes.
Why should somebody tell me if I can grow a plant in my yard, as long as I don't sell it? Personal use, I mean, who's the government or somebody else to vote for me?
Yeah.
If it's self-government, you know. If I
Yeah.
want to smoke, I should be able to smoke.
Got a bottle of bourbon at home? What's
Well, I mean,
yours?
the kids, they can't smoke it, they'll go buy some bath salt or something else that'll kill them. Yeah, I mean, they want to get high, they're gonna get high.
Right. That's something that we have to understand, I think, the point I was going to make. I'm fixing to... Okay, I'm fixing to turn it over to Jack in just a minute. I'll just say that, you know, you don't have to agree with the concept. You don't have to agree with the health decisions that a person makes. You don't have to.
Can I tell you what's wrong with that legislation right there?
This legislation?
That one right there?
Yeah, hold on just a minute.
Okay.
You don't have to agree, but with the kind of medicine that a person is taking or kind of advice they're getting, but at least consider the idea of republic of self-government, and I think the idea of the America that I believe in is where people are the best equipped to govern themselves. Go ahead.
Okay, this legislation is based on particular amounts of THC and CBD oil. There's probably 20 different components to that plant. You have to use all the plant, not just pieces of the plant. You can't take H2O and take the O out and have drinking water. It won't work. They have to work together. This plant has to work together. Each child, it's kind of like an allergy. Everybody has allergies, but everybody's allergy is different, and it can be treated differently. Seizures are treated differently, with different levels of THC and different levels of CBD and CBGs and all the other different chemicals. They're different. So when you have a trial like this that is strict with this much THC, this much CBD, it's not going to work for half of them or 3/4 of them. So it's going to fail because it's not going to work for all 10 children and only 10 children.
What do you mean 10 children?
Because there's a lot of
There are
factors.
only 10 children that are going to be in this trial.
So this law only affects
10
that
children.
trial?
These
10 children.
Okay.
This is experimental studies.
Yeah, as far as the THC goes, I would agree that research needs to be done on all of the
It's
plants.
been done.
Yeah,
in
it
other
has.
countries,
It
and
has.
We're not any. Our doctors are going over there to do studies over in what is it?
Israel,
Israel, France
Sure.
over there.
Romania,
Our
Russia.
doctors are going and doing these studies.
I don't disagree with any of that.
Why can we not use those instead of wasting our dollars to
Well-
do more studies?
Right.
That have already been
Unfortunately, we have to, as a society, take very, very small baby steps.
Well, in the
I mean, I don't necessarily like it, but sometimes that's the only way you're going to get there. And I do believe that this is opening the door for, I believe that this is the first step to medical marijuana. But I think that, unfortunately, you got to hold their hands and just lead them right through to get it done.
It opens the door of conversation. I've spoke to many
It
doctors.
does, yeah, it does.
And actually, I was out there with the petitions, both petitions, the legal petition and the medical petition. I had people that were, they were working with drug addicts, they're coming by, they're signing both of them for the medical and the recreational. They're like, oh yeah, we don't see a problem with this. It's the other drugs that are the problem. So, and I've had doctors that signed it, okay? We don't have an issue with that. That's good. It helps with cancer patients. It helps with pain patients. It needs to be out there. Even the recreational, because it's healthier. 400,000 people die from smoking cigarettes, and I'm one of them. So, but none have died from smoking cannabis. Cannabis being the actual name of it. So you get down to this trial, it's only 10 children, it's all strict, and it's going to fail. There's no doubt about it. You cannot have the same medicine for 10 children that have different types of
So
epilepsy.
here's what I'm hearing the two of y'all say.
What?
You're sold on the damn thing. I don't care what it says, but what he's saying is we're self-governed, each of us,
Exactly.
and we've
We
got to
should-
hold their hand. We've got to let them take this step. If it
Yes.
fails, then it may be very important to have you around to tell them, why don't you try another one and include this?
Yeah.
Or this. I'm an epileptic. I'm very opposed to age 18.
Exactly.
Because I'm past 18 a long time.
Exactly.
So,
And
I
so
mean,
am I.
but what I'm hearing John say is, if we truly are self-governed, then let's try these 10, and then let's see where it goes.
Yes.
Just,
Okay.
resistance to
legalize
change.
it across the board.
Yeah, I understand, where you're coming from. Let's, Jack Jones has studied this issue. I don't know if he's gonna come down where I come down on it, but I've said he can have the floor, or actually he asked if he could say some things on it when I asked him to do another subject, so I'm just gonna turn it over to him for, 10, 15 minutes you want.
Come up there again?
Yeah, if you'd like, and,
That way you don't have to change the camera angle.
you can draw on the board and all that good stuff.
I'm 62. No, I'm the vice chair.
And I'm also
Isn't it
a
62?
girl. Our father's in it.
62?
Yeah, Anna said that I'm the vice chair for precinct
No,
62,
pesticides, no
so I
pesticides.
forgot about that. But anyway,
It uses a third
feel
of
kind of
the
odd being up here
population.
without a podium. I kind of always have something to hold on to whenever I talk. So anyway, I am a novice, okay, whenever it comes to medical marijuana. I do not claim to be any kind of a marijuana expert, okay, but I'm for medical marijuana. And if you was to define medical marijuana, I did a quick little Google search on it and found several different definitions, but the definition that I would probably use is that medical marijuana is the use of cannabis and its constituent cannabinoids as medical therapy to treat disease or alleviate symptoms and or pain, okay? So, like I said, I'm for medical marijuana. One of the reasons why I'm for medical marijuana, it was in 2001, I was diagnosed with a very rare brain tumor. What I had was called an acoustic neuroma, but it also had characteristics of what's called a meningioma. At the time, my neurologist told me that and I don't know how true this is what my neurologist told me, 1 out of 100,000 people that develop a brain tumor will have the kind of brain tumor that I had. So, I don't know if anybody in here has ever had a brain tumor, but it's not fun, okay? It was horrible. It was bad, no doubt about it. Still to this day, I still suffer from the effects of my brain tumor. Different things. I have horrible migraine headaches. Some of you ladies in here probably have had migraine headaches. Seems to me that ladies are more susceptible to getting a migraine than a lot of men. We all know that people say, I've got a migraine, you know, while they're on Facebook or whatever. But real migraines, my opinion of a real migraine is the tick of a clock makes your head feel like it's exploding. And that's saying it mildly, okay? Whenever I have one of my brain tumor headaches, as I call it, about the only way to really get rid of it for me is to go to the doctor and he puts me on some kind of a drip and I'm there and I don't remember and I wake up at home the next day with a horrible headache. I had an episode of that, I don't know, maybe 6-8 months ago. I used to get them really frequently. Thank the Lord I don't get them anything like that anymore. But I had to cancel a job. I'm a plumber by trade, if anybody doesn't know. I had to cancel a job for a really sweet lady and told her I'd be there the next day. Or I didn't. My folks told them I'd be there the next day. So I go over to this lady's house, and she's like 97 years old, and she is a retired public health nurse from New York. Sweet lady. She's a great lady. And she asked me, she said, Jack, what do you think that we, gave people for migraine headaches in the 30s? I don't know. What'd you give? Cannabis. That's what they gave them. Now I was like, okay, some of y'all are smoking it or what? And she's like, no. They had like a cannabis extract. They called it. I never can pronounce this properly.
Tincture cannabis.
Yep, that's it. And basically what it is they take marijuana. A lot of you people probably know about it. I was clueless. They have a bottle of basically like moonshine, Everclear, okay? They put all this stuff in it and they let it set for so long and it draws it out, okay? And takes the THC out and it's into the liquid. So just a few drops under the tongue, boom, migraines are gone. I was like, really? And she said, yes. Well, unfortunately, I can't try that out here in the state of Oklahoma. It'd be great to try. But she said not only is it good to help get rid of the headache, it's also good as a preventative to help keep the headaches from happening. I'm like, so, you didn't have to, I went to college, I knew about this stuff, but I didn't know about it. Does that make sense? I didn't hang with them kind of people, Do what now?
That would have been a me.
Yeah, But, so anyway, what I'm getting at is that in the process of my recovery from my brain tumor, it would have been so good to have it if I needed it, or if I would have wanted it, or if my doctors would have suggested it. In the process of it, they had to destroy my inner ear, so my balance isn't good. I used to ride Harleys all the time, brother. Oh, seeing your bike out there just, giving me the itch. But I'd get real nauseated real easy. Marijuana is really good, I've been told, for people that have nausea problems and things like that. But another thing I was going to get at is that this lady that told me about this, she was 97 years old, and she straight up told me that she was having some health problems and she was going to start getting marijuana. The only problem was she lived in Oklahoma, 97 years old. She didn't think that they'd put her in jail for it. But she has family that lives off. And they said, hey, Mom, we'll bring it to you. So they started bringing it to her. It's none of my business. So then at some point she got to where that she just really couldn't take care of herself that well at home. She moved to a state that has medical marijuana. So she's doing her brownies, cookies, whatever, But some other things that I just kind of wanted to touch on. Like I said, I am not an expert in the field of marijuana, okay? But it's not just smoking it, like he said. You know, you can eat it, and you don't just eat the herb or the plant, okay? It gets a little bit more complicated than that. From my understanding, it needs to have a fat for it to adhere to. If you just take it and we was to just, I'm going to make marijuana tea and I'm going to put it in this bottle and we're going to add marijuana and heat it up, it don't work like that. Because the way I understand it, once you take the lid off, it evaporates. Am I correct? Okay, what happens to it? What happens to it?
Just drink it and find out.
Yeah, well, there's not going to be anything in it, right?
It has to have a fat
It has to have a fat to attach to.
THC.
So
And-
if I could put it in my mouth and get it warm and shake it up, I
But as
might
far as the,
stick to the fat,
if you were
right?
to drink a tea mixture of it, you will feel the effects, the
Yes.
psychoactive effects.
But it works best if you dissolve it with a fat, or you have
Well-
a fat in with it, correct?
Actually, you get it quicker, it reacts quicker if you do smoke it.
But then
Yeah, no, we're not talking about smoking. We're just talking about if you was to ingest it.
If you ingest it, it takes about 45 minutes.
Go through
before-
blood
Right, but if you was to ingest it with it wasn't prepared, you take a straight bud, you pop it in your mouth, chew it up.
Yeah, you can actually use that, yeah, in salads, you can break it in salads.
Right, okay. Are you gonna get high from it? Are you gonna get high from it like if I was to take and put it in a tincture?
No,
No.
because if you're putting it into a tincture or a butter, you're gonna have a higher concentrate,
Mm-hmm.
because you're gonna use a lot more of it to
Right.
make that butter.
And you'll have the fat in there for the
And you'll
THC
have the fat in there to draw it into the
right,
butter.
okay. So then you, also, there's another way, is that they're also making it in a spray form in some of these medical marijuana friendly states, okay? You can go in and if you don't like the cookies that they have, or the soda pop that they have, or the candy bars that they have, or the suckers, or the all kinds of other things, there's some spray that you can spray in your mouth. They make all kinds of oils and creams, they make all kinds of things. But what's some of the stuff that it helps with? Okay? Well, we already talked about some briefly earlier, was cancer, okay? Anybody in here that has ever taken chemotherapy, you're putting poison in your body, right? I mean, that's what it is. And the after effects, horrible nausea, vomiting, you're sick, you're wiped out. Marijuana has been shown to help people with that. Medical marijuana, the plant, natural plant, right? I mean, it grows, and I know people add fertilizer, and they can do all kinds of other things to it, okay? But it's a plant. And this is a natural plant. But you can also go and get a prescription from the doctor, your doctor that's giving you your chemotherapy, for synthetic marijuana. Now, this synthetic pill, I had the name I wrote down. I'll try to remember it. Marinol is the brand name of it. But it's synthetic marijuana, or synthetic THC, made in a lab. It's basically the same thing as the natural form of THC. Okay, so why should I have to take and pay a pharmacist, pay a big drug company for their synthetic marijuana, whenever I can take and get the natural, real plant that grows? Okay, my opinion is I would rather have a natural form of medication than I would something from a pharmaceutical company. Medicine's great. You know, I know that medicine helps a lot of people. But if I can have something that's a little bit more natural, you know, there's a big organic thing and non-GMO and all that. Why would I want to take something from a pharmaceutical company whenever I could have something that's more natural?
Marinol, by the way, is only THC. Remember when I
Exactly.
said
Right. It has all the other stuff. Right.
Marinol does
Right.
not have.
Right. It's just synthetic THC.
And that's why
right.
it doesn't work.
Right. Well, Marinol, it works for people that have, you know, nausea and things like that, but you're not going to have the effects of the entire marijuana plant. Let's see, what's some other things that I had come up with? AIDS helps a lot with AIDS, and there's also a problem with people wasting away whenever they have AIDS. This also helps to stimulate the appetite.
It's called the munchies.
Yeah, it can give that. We talked about epilepsy, and there's a lot of other neurological disorders that can be associated that marijuana could help. There's also a lot of studies right now that shows Alzheimer's, that it can help with Alzheimer's, and that it has. Asthma, COPD, and then you think, okay, asthma, smoking. Well, you know, it's not just, you don't just smoke marijuana. A lot of times we just think that that's the only way that people can take it. But if it can help them relax their breathing, I don't know if you've ever been with anybody that's having a really bad asthma attack. They just can't relax their lungs enough to get a volume of air. I have not been around anybody taking marijuana while they're having an asthma attack, but I do know that it relaxes the body, and so if it relaxes the body, to me, that it would just make sense that it would help. I'm sure everyone in here probably has cable or some way of getting cable. On CNN, I'm not really a big fan of CNN, but there is a documentary that comes on every so often, and it's about marijuana. And one of the doctors on there, his name's Dr. Sanjay Gupta or something like that. Yeah, he did a documentary on medical marijuana. Well, whenever he first started the documentary, he was very anti-medical marijuana. And the more that he actually did the research on it, he changed his opinion. He goes out and he sees them using the oils on these little kids that have the really bad epileptic seizures. Just watching that on TV, not even giving them the cannabis oil or anything like that, just watching what these parents are going through, watching their children die, basically, in their arms. Man, I got 3 kids. If that was me, and I thought that it would help, I probably wouldn't be in Oklahoma, okay? But if you ever get a chance, I don't even remember the name of it, but it's a very good documentary.
Sanjay Gupta, Weed.
Is that what it is, Weed? It's very good. And he goes into a lot of stuff in the control that they have, and it's mainly in Colorado is where he's at. The control that the state has on the plant. I mean, it's not just, and I don't really like government control, okay? I really don't. But if you're going to have this and there's so much controversy, it might as well be regulated, okay? That's my opinion. People disagree. That's cool. I'm all right with it. But everything from seed to it being sold at the dispensary is totally regulated. They know exactly where that piece of plant went. They know, and now, do they know who bought it? That I don't know. I don't know that. But they have everything tracked. I mean, and there's cameras everywhere in their growing rooms, and everything has barcodes, and it's very sophisticated how that they're doing it. And there's a lot of trial and error that they're doing. There's things that they're doing up there that they're kind of finding out what's working and what doesn't work. But there's a whole host of things, of medical conditions and things that it can help. Moving along, PTSD. It does help with things like that. From what I read, 23 states currently have medical marijuana. Now, there's more states that have a form of medical marijuana that is just involves the oils and stuff, and I believe that's 16 states. I stand to be corrected on that. But there are some problems associated with medical marijuana. About the biggest problem is that it's a cash-only business. Okay, that is a problem because the banks do not want the dispensaries depositing their cash into the banks because it's still technically a federal crime, okay, to have the marijuana. So it's a cash-only business. Now, if you was to be doing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sales, and I don't really know, that's another thing. I looked up figures on approximately how much, revenue can a state generate in our size with medical marijuana. Man, the numbers was everything from $100,000 all the way to $60 million. So I really couldn't find a site that I felt comfortable giving the numbers away. But it's cash-only business. And this is also in that Weeds documentary, I believe. You know how hard it would be to pay your electric bill in only cash, your phone bill, all your bills that you would have associated with your business in cash? That would be really difficult. It really would be difficult. And you better have a good bookkeeper to keep up with every dollar. And they even have to pay their taxes in cash. When they go down to pay their state sales tax, they also get charged a penalty for paying in cash because someone has to physically count every dollar.
You do know that there is legislation right now in the Capitol to change
Yeah,
it to allow them.
they've talked about that. But I have a plumbing company, and cash is always great. We love cash, okay? But I would hate to think that I have $200,000 in cash that I can't go put in the bank. And everybody knows where Jack Jones is going to be living and having $200,000 in a safe, right? So that can be a problem. Also, another thing that I noticed was a small issue, and that was in the area of edibles. Like whenever Colorado first started the recreational marijuana last year, I think they had a huge boom in the edible sales, okay? Well, a lot of people would think, okay, well, here's a cookie. How many servings are in that cookie? 1. Wrong. Sometimes they would have 3 and 4 servings per cookie. Well, a guy like me, man, a quarter of a cookie ain't happening, okay? So, you know, these people, they ingest the whole cookie. They're someone that's not used to the effects of marijuana, and it scares them to death because they've taken a lot of this THC and a lot of the chemical into their body. And that was an issue that they had. So then there was some problems. Okay, are we going to take and try to cut back on the amount of marijuana or cannabis in the cookie, or are we going to make the cookie smaller, or are we going to try to put a label on it that says, hey, there's 4 servings here, or are we going to put it up, you know, for the dispensary? So, I mean, you know, there was some issues there that they had, but I think they're working through some of that. And then another thing that I had came up with was, is there a lethal dose of marijuana? Okay. Now, how many people have died from marijuana? None. Okay. Now, have people done some really stupid things while they was on marijuana and got themselves killed? Sure. How many people have died from alcohol? How many people died from alcohol poisoning? Lots and lots and lots, and it's perfectly legal.
Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals. That's a big one. I can't say I guarantee, but there's probably everybody in here probably knows someone that has overdosed on pain medicine. And some of us probably know someone that's overdosed and died from whether it was an intentional overdose or whether it was an accidental overdose.
I almost did.
Yeah. Whenever I had my brain tumor taken out, I was overdosed on morphine. I would have died had they not had me intubated already. It was one of them cases where this doctor tells them to do this and another doctor tells them to do that. Somebody didn't do their job by looking at the chart and somebody gave it to me while they were doing whatever, and things can happen, okay? But accidents do happen. But whenever I looked it up, how much marijuana would it take for somebody to get a lethal dose, okay? Well, I know they'll probably argue with me, okay? This is what I found. You would have to consume 1,500 pounds of marijuana in 15 minutes. Okay?
That's a lot of cookies.
Yeah.
That is a ton of cookies, even for me, okay? So, yeah. So, in the overall scheme of things, marijuana, in my opinion, is relatively safe. Now, it's not relatively safe in the eyes of our government, okay?
Even though they hold the patent.
Yeah. So, if you get a chance, go to the DEA's website, okay, and look at the schedule of drugs, okay? Marijuana is classified as a Schedule I drug. That basically means that there is no known medical use for any drug that's in Class 1, okay? Now, I've got a little link here, and I will name some of the drugs that are on the DEA's, if I can get it to pull up. Well, it's the way, there it is. Yeah, there's, okay, on Schedule 1, that has no known medical use, okay? And it's also the most dangerous of all drugs with potential severe psychological and physical dependence, okay? That's what Schedule 1 means. LSD, we know that's pretty bad stuff, right? LSD, that's bad. Then marijuana, and then there's a couple other ones that are ecstasy, okay? And that's Schedule 1. That's some of them that's in Schedule 1. Schedule 2, they're substances or chemicals that are defined as drugs with a high potential for abuse. They have less abuse potential than Schedule 1 drugs, and they can possibly lead to to severe psychological or physical addiction, okay? and they are considered useful for some medical use, okay? Some of these drugs are Vicodin, methamphetamine, methadone, Demerol, Oxycontin, and Ritalin. Now, Ritalin. Yeah.
How many kids?
Ritalin is in the same classification as methamphetamine. Think about that for a second, okay? I'm not telling you what to do with your children, your grandchildren. If they're on Ritalin, that's y'all's business. My child will not be on any kind of medicine that is even associated with methamphetamine, okay? The DEA says that methamphetamine is a class 2, which means that it has some medical use. Marijuana, class 1, absolutely no medical use. Now, I'm sure every one of us in here have seen the destruction that meth does to people. Meth is straight of the devil, in my opinion, okay? Meth ruins people's lives. Once it snatches them, they can't get rid of it, okay? I know I'm fixing to get shut down, but methamphetamine is a Schedule II. Our government says that meth is less addicting and has a medical use where marijuana doesn't. That in itself changed my opinion a lot on the medical marijuana issue. Now, is it something that, I want to see recreational available? Probably not. Do I have a big problem with it? No, I really don't. Do I think that it's your right and your choice? Yeah, I really do. But at this point, Oklahoma is not ready for recreational marijuana. I mean, it's a struggle right now to just talk to some people about it medically. But that's my opinion, and we can talk about it or whatever John's got planned.
All right, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left. Let's round of applause. Would anybody like to speak in the 2 or 3 minutes that we have in the negative on medical marijuana? Anything you'd like to say?
You bring me sample cookies?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Like I said, you don't have to even agree with the best ones to make their own decisions. So if you don't even agree with the findings about the medical use of marijuana, then certainly think about that concept right there. Okay, I will say that a lot of times the bills that I choose to talk about are bills that people have said, hey, I'm interested in that. The Dietitians Act was a bill that someone brought up to me. I've got one that Vicki brought up for next time that we're going to look at. And if you have something you'd like to look at, I'd love to hear from you. So let me know. Any final closing thoughts before we say goodbye?
I have a question. How much of the marijuana plant can you use? Because, I buy clothes made out of hemp because I like them.
Hemp is a perfect product.
So-
And we need our
Every bit of it.
farmers.
Okay, that's what I
Every
wanted.
bit
What
of
about the roots?
Okay, the seeds have got really,
Healthy.
yes.
I mean,
okay, so-
health benefits.
All of it.
Hemp seeds. The plant stock
Hemp
itself,
and marijuana are different.
Yes. hemp
Yes,
is-
I understand.
the stock itself, funny thing about it is, the U.S. Constitution was written on hemp paper. George Washington, his jacket was hemp. It's been all used through.
World War II, the government actually called for hemp for victory. Had farmers growing hemp because we lost our trade, okay, for silk, for our boats and ropes. So we had to grow hemp. But they hid all that documentation from everybody because they didn't want everybody to know about the videos that they would take around. For hemp for victory! We need our military to have shoes and clothes. They didn't want everybody to know about that.
Really
because
outlasts
hemp
lots of living.
clothes and hemp lasts hundreds of years compared to cotton. Cotton wouldn't make it across the ocean. Okay, hemp will.
You can buy hemp seed at the health food store.
Yes.
Okay, our chairman, in case you don't know, this is our chairman of the Carter County Republican Party, Don Ray Thomason. I'm going to let him make the last comment, and then if anybody wants to stay around, feel free to do so.
I just wanted to ask you about the school choice bill. Do you know anything about it?
I don't really.
Did it
not-
go on did they vote on it? Did they pass it? I mean, it was
I-
passed out of committee, wasn't it?
I don't know, Don Ray.
Or, I just wondered about that. If you know.
All right, well, thanks for your time. Stay around if you
Thank
want,
you.
and I appreciate it.
Thank you.